Brian, thank you so much for talking with me today. I know we talk all the time about sales and HubSpot and fun stuff, but I'm really excited to talk with you today about sales enablement. But can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. I'm excited to speak with you as well. And I guess I'll apologize in advance. Sign of the times if you hear my daughter in the background. I apologize about that.
Okay.
So Bryan Mueller, I'm a channel account manager over at HubSpot. I've been at HubSpot for over 6 years now, so 6 and change, and have worked with agencies for 5 years, just on all things sales, growth, and sales enablement. And I was also the global sales trainer at HubSpot for just over a year. So trained 500 plus sales reps here, help build out our sales process and provide resources for enablement and things along those lines moving forward. So I'm excited to connect and talk through some sales enablement here.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say. Sales enablement gets talked about all the time. It's like, I feel like it's a fancy term that people throw around. It's not even fancy, but it's just something that people have been saying a lot in the past few years. But really, like, what is sales enablement?
It is a buzzword, of course. But I mean, the standard definition of sales enablement, right, is relatively straightforward. It's providing sales with resources, tools, content, process, so on and so forth. But when I think of sales enablement, I think of kind of just one phrase of clarity breeds mastery, right? And I think, when you clarify and simplify all things related to the sale, you give and drive velocity within deals, right? So you're helping reps build credibility with succinct talk tracks throughout the process. And you can close deals that you otherwise wouldn't have closed or hadn't closed previously. And then you can do that with less discounts, and you have the ability to sell on value. On top of that, you create a systemized process for your organization that not only does all the things that I just mentioned, but it helps with your onboarding and your retention, right? So people who are coming on understand, how things operate and what to say, what the process looks like. So that's really what I think sales enablement is in my kind of mind frame, to really drive that velocity and help reps close deals.
Yeah, I like that. And it kind of leads really well into the next thing, like the next question is, like, sales enablement really, it's super important for the marketing team to support the sales team and to have, give them the content that they need and the resources that they need to help close deals and like work leads through the process. But I think, it's cliche, but a lot of times sales and marketing don't get along and there's just some friction. But in order for sales enablement to work, they really need to be in sync and on the same page. So do you have any advice on how sales and marketing can be on the same page?
Yeah, I've never heard that before, that sales and marketing are disjointed or things like that. It's uncommon. But no, obviously we hear it all the time, right? It's one of the most common reasons I see sales and marketing not really seeing eye to eye. Is on the surface, they say it's a lack of communication, right? But as and you're in sales, as you dig in, you kind of go through like the 5 whys of like, well, why aren't you communicating, right? Like, why isn't there that kind of nice back and forth? So you dig deeper in understanding that ultimately they don't have an easy and consistent way to communicate, not only conversationally, but metrics wise, right? Yep. So marketing is doing all their information over here and saying, look, I just got you 20 leads. And sales is saying, well, I'm over here and I'm kind of knocking doors and those leads aren't great, or they are great, or we don't get enough, or whatever it might be. So I think there's kind of this baseline or this structure that needs to happen that allows them to put, for a cliche term, like these SMART goals next to it, so they can understand. And I'm a big proponent of the book Traction. Have you read it?
Oh, for sure.
It's awesome, right? It's just like a systematic way to run an organization. But now, once you have your key metrics, right, and you can easily do it, it doesn't take someone on the marketing team, 40 hours to pull a bunch of reports together. You can develop your quarterly rocks. You can communicate more effectively. But one of the most common underutilized marketing resources over in sales that I see, it's like base level stuff, is your personas, right? Marketing personas. Like, you'll reach out to a sales team in an organization, but well, who are you selling to? What are your marketing personas? Or what are your personas in general? Crickets. No one knows, right? So I'll say when I started building out the sales training process for HubSpot, first thing someone does in sales training is you get our personas. here is the individuals that marketing is working to attract. Here's their, their pain points. Here's where they're going. Here's their growth initiatives. Here's the type of questions. Here's what their world looks like. So I think one of my first tip would be making sure that you communicate, co-develop a persona, and then pass back that information. What questions are you getting on sales? Let's create some content. As it relates to inbound marketing, right? Let's create some content to educate the market and drive those individuals who have those questions there. But yeah, so I think that's kind of the starting point to help aligning sales and marketing. And I know you run into this all the time. I guess, have you seen anything differently?
No, I 100% agree with you. And I feel like each side of the table undervalues the other side. Sales feels like marketing is just coming up with random ideas that aren't supporting the bottom line, and marketing thinks that sales is just closing driven. And of course, ultimately that's the purpose of a sales role, but it's not. Like the sales, because they're the the front line of an organization, they can provide a lot of feedback on, is that persona accurate? Are those the questions that they're asking? And I found that to be really valuable. And I really like that you brought up the 5 whys to and even traction, because really having conversations around the issues between the two teams and really uncovering what that specific issue is. It might be, like marketing doesn't know what we're doing. Well, what do you mean? Uncover, like, why do you say that? Is there like an ad that went out that you didn't like? So uncovering really like those specific things that maybe like tip the other team off.
Yeah, and like when I think of like sales thinks of themselves as the front line, right? But honestly, the front line a lot of times is marketing, right? That's the first, like if you think of the way people buy and educate themselves today, they're going to know who you are before they're researching. Marketing's driving them there. Like marketing's the front line. Like I also think marketing a lot of time becomes that centralized communication across every part of a customer's journey, right? First touch, helping with the sales side of things, nurturing through the sales process. Once they're a customer, continued communication for customer engagements, right? Like marketing almost is becoming more important than sales, or being viewed as more important as or being viewed at the same level as sales, if you will, in a lot of conversations that I'm having today. But one thing I will say is marketing and sales are 2 different organizations. And if I bring it back to kind of your original question, sales enablement, depending on the size of company, there's usually someone who, a larger company has that type of in there that's completely different than marketing team or sales team, right? They're that kind of connection between the two that helps take the message from the marketing side, develop it into a one-to-one storyline for your sales to be able to run and execute. And then that's kind of the trick in an organization at scaling of when and how does that come into play? Do you use an external resource to build out sales enablement tools and things along those lines? So it becomes like an interesting question of, when do you bring something like that onto an organization?
Yeah. And I think, if my memory serves me correctly, one of the last stats that I heard was by the time a lead reaches out to you in your website, they're like 80% sure they're going to buy.
Yep.
And you're right. Marketing is the team that gets them 80% of the way there. Absolutely.
100%. We have all the resources at our fingertips now to figure out and make our own decision. And then it comes sales. It's not what you sell anymore. It's how you sell it. Right. So that's why enablement's so important. It teaches you how to sell what you're selling, because there's people in the market who do the same thing as you. Right. And when I think of, if I'm in a competitive sales environment, it's not because, a lot of times it is like HubSpot's a little bit different than a different tool or things along those lines, but I've done my research to uncover their pains. I understand their situation and I can prescribe the right solution for them for growth. And less about here's how you do it on a software tool or something along those lines. So they're 80% of the way there. And then you have to kind of use those sales skills to be able to get them
absolutely
the rest of the way.
And I know we've kind of been talking about this our whole conversation, but really, how can sales enablement bring immediate value to your inbound marketing efforts, and vice versa? How can inbound bring immediate value to sales enablement?
So I would say there's always quick wins that you can deliver on that provide that immediate value, but I'll throw an asterisk next to the word value, right? That word is multifaceted and means different things to different organizations, right? So when I can work to generalize it and like what many people might consider to be valuable. But I'll say that with the idea, when I think of adding sales enablement or something along those lines to organization, any new change or any new addition, it has 3 phases, right? It's hard in the beginning. It's a little bit messy in the middle, but it's gorgeous at the end, right? That end product is absolutely fantastic. So yes, there's some quick wins that you can bring, like helping, clarify a sales process or work on talk tracks to be able to, answer questions in a succinct way or pass information from one rep to another to make sure that that's consistent messaging across the board. So, those are just a few things that I would say could bring to immediate value. When I think of sales and marketing in general, I often think of there's a kind of a Bruce Lee quote that is tweaked. It says, you should say one thing 10,000 times, not 10,000 things one time. So for instance, marketing should be saying the same thing that you're saying over and over again. Then they come to you and you repeat that value, right? Because it takes about 7 times for someone to really kind of let that sink in. So that consistency across, both of those teams is so important. And a lot of times that's not developed or built out on the sales team as succinctly as it is on your go-to-market strategy on the marketing side.
Yep, absolutely. That makes sense. And I even think too, like inbound marketing, we always say it's kind of the long game. You put a blog up, it's not going to deliver leads to you tomorrow. But one of the things that inbound marketing, I think gets underutilized in that you put a blog up, and if it's something that's, going to drive a lead to make a decision, give it to your sales team. Let them get it right away, because it helps them close things quicker.
Nailed it. There's different distribution channels to that content. Yeah. Sales team, social, paid, organic. Sure. I think you nailed it, and I'm actually gonna steal that from you and bring that up in all my conversations, because it is way underutilized. So that's fantastic. I actually have a template that I use post discovery call, right? And it has a section that's just my quick little, thanks for investing time. Then after that this is what I learned, right? And then make sure I highlight those main areas. And then I have resources section. And those resources section are the evergreen content that my marketing team created. And it's absolutely fantastic. And I can see when someone clicks on it, so I know exactly what they're interested in.
Yep, absolutely. And, a lot of large sales organizations maybe have lopsided marketing teams. Sometimes, the marketing team can be a lot smaller than a sales team. It might even be one person or one decision maker. What advice do you have for a lone marketer in a sales org?
First, I say I commend you. That is not an easy role to be in, because there's a lot of things to work on in the marketing side. Granted, I come from working with agencies and things along those lines, which known for a fantastic resource to be able to help leverage an individual on to get more done. But I think for that individual, I often think of yourself as an extension of sales rather than a different department, right? Ultimately, in terms of inbound marketing, you're answering the same questions. Your sales does it in a one-to-one manner. You do it in a one-to-many format, right? Shadow calls, have regular meetings. But I think the key thing that I learned kind of as I had some different ventures internally here at HubSpot is you need to create that feedback loop that allows the sales team to see that their feedback is being utilized in some way. So a key way to do that is what you just mentioned. Hey, we had this great conversation. I shadowed this call. I actually saw that question on 3 different other calls. Here's a resource that you can use next time. Pull it up on a screen share, send it afterwards. I think that's going to build so much credibility for the sales team, because sales, you want to see that immediate, I can go to my desk and in seat and utilize something, not 6 months later, I'm going to get a lead organically or something like that. So create yourself as a pivotal part in that sales org. So much so where they think you're part of the sales org.
And one of the things I love that we do at Lone Fir is the marketing director and I meet, every week we have a sales and marketing meeting. And she's like, what kind of content should the team work on for sales this week? So we have based on, probably 20 different things that based on priority, what needs to be worked on first. And that's been really helpful because it allows me to, have really good follow-ups with leads that come in and, reach outs and things like that. So I absolutely love it.
Do you call that your smarketing meeting? That's a term.
No, we don't. Okay. I know.
It's like over, I'm like, all right, I don't know if I love it, but it gets the point across. One thing that I think is interesting internally here at HubSpot, our marketing team, as well as our product team, which is relatively unusual, holds a number, right? They carry a number just like sales. and you have the analytics and you can communicate on it, you can show your sources, you can show how many leads came from what, the dollar amount attributed to it. I think the more you hold someone to, this is the expectation, the better as well. So I think that that's a key area in this marketing meeting to say, hey, you were supposed to deliver X per quarter. What's happening? How are we changing? What are we doing?
Right. Absolutely. KPIs are really important.
Yes.
Bryan, thank you for chatting with me today. It's been really fun to talk about sales enablement.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.